All right, if you're a React dev, you know the deal. The tool landscape is just constantly shifting, right? New libraries, new frameworks. It feels like it never stops. So the big question is, how do you pick the right stack for 2025? Well, we're going to dive into an essential toolkit that'll help you save a ton of time and write some seriously clean, efficient code.
Yeah, it can be totally overwhelming. I mean, you're trying to stay current, but you also have to, actually get work done. So our goal here is to cut right through all that noise. We're going to look at some really powerful tools that solve the real-world problems you actually face every single day.
So before we jump in, let's do a super quick refresh on React itself. Its real superpower, its whole secret sauce, is that component model, right? The idea of building these massive, complex apps from tiny, reusable bits of UI. And trust me, that concept is absolutely central to all the tools we're about to talk about. And one more thing, a really quick but super important distinction. We're talking about React.js today, which is the library for building websites and web apps. Its sibling, React Native, that's a whole different beast. It's a framework for building mobile apps. Just wanted to get that straight.
Okay, here's the game plan. First, we'll talk about building components. Then, we'll move into testing and visualizing your code. After that, we'll cover crafting a great user experience, and we'll wrap up with managing state and your whole development workflow. Let's get into it. All right, let's start right at the foundation, the components themselves. I mean, if React is all about these reusable parts, the big question is, how do you manage them effectively, especially when you're working with a team?
And that's exactly where a tool like Bit comes into play. Seriously, think of it like a shared workshop. It's a place where your team can all work on individual components completely separate from the main project. Plus, it gives you access to this huge community library, so you're not always reinventing the wheel and building everything from scratch. Okay, next up is Storybook. So if Bit is that shared workshop, think of Storybook as your own personal sandbox. It lets you build and perfect your components completely in isolation. It is absolutely brilliant for testing every single possible state. What does a button look like when it's loading or disabled or active? And you can do all of that without having to fire up your entire application.
And to round out this category, we've got React Cosmos. Now, it's kind of similar to Storybook, but its main focus is on creating a really cohesive design system. It's all about making sure designers and developers are on the same page. And a huge bonus, it has hot reloading, which is awesome for development because you see your changes instantly. Okay, so you've built all these awesome components. Now what? How do you make sure they actually work? And how do you even begin to understand how they all fit together in a bigger project? Well, that brings us right to our next section, testing and visualization.
When it comes to testing in the React world, Jest is pretty much king. And its most powerful feature, hands down, is snapshot testing. It's genius. Just basically takes a picture of your component's output. Then, if a future code change accidentally messes up the UI, the test fails. It's such a simple but incredibly effective way to catch those sneaky visual bugs. As your apps get bigger and more complex, it can be tough to keep track of everything. That's where React Lite comes in. It basically gives you an X-ray of your entire application, showing you your component structure as this nice, clean flowchart. It makes debugging and understanding how data flows so much easier. And the best part? It's just a simple Chrome extension. So, having an app that works is great, but let's be real, a fantastic user experience is what really makes an application stand out. So now, let's look at some tools that help you build interfaces that are not just functional, but beautiful and interactive. So if you want to build a really good-looking app without having to design every single button from scratch, Evergreen is a fantastic choice. It's a UI framework from the team at Segment, and it gives you a complete set of really polished, flexible components right out of the box. Super helpful. Now, to really bring your app to life, you need animation, and Framer Motion is, without a doubt, one of the best animation libraries out there for React. It makes adding even complex animations surprisingly simple. We're talking everything from a basic fade-in to cool gesture-based interactions. It just makes your UI feel so fluid and professional. A huge piece of the user experience puzzle is how your app deals with data. And TanStack Query, you might know it as React Query, is an absolute master at this. It takes care of all the tricky stuff like fetching, caching, and updating data from your server. For you, that means way less boilerplate code. For your users, it means a much faster, more responsive app. It's a win-win. A lot of us screw up, so to speak, with Bootstrap and its amazing responsive grid system. Well, React Bootstrap is the perfect bridge between that world and the world of React.
It gives you all the power and familiarity of Bootstrap, but everything has been rebuilt as true native React components. It's the best of both worlds. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the brain of your application, its state. We'll also cover some key tools that can really streamline your day-to-day development workflow.
When you're building really large, complex applications, managing state can become a nightmare. And that's the problem Redux was built to solve. It uses this concept of a single centralized store that holds your entire app state. This creates a very predictable, one-way data flow that makes debugging those really tricky application behaviors so much easier. Now, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have Zustand. It's a much more modern, lightweight alternative. I'm talking almost zero boilerplate compared to Redux. It uses this really simple, intuitive, hook-spaced approach, and it's heavily optimized to prevent unnecessary re-renders, which helps keep your app super fast and performant.
So, how do you pick between the two? Well, it kind of breaks down like this. Redux gives you a very structured, predictable approach that's fantastic for massive applications with big teams. Zustand, on the other hand, is way simpler. It's got less boilerplate, a gentler learning curve, and honestly, it's a great choice for pretty much any project, small or large.
For a long time, the absolute simplest way to get a new React project off the ground has been create React app. You run one single command, and boom, it sets up a complete development environment for you. It pre-configures all the complicated stuff like Babel and Webpack, so you can just jump right in and start writing code. And finally, let's talk about where you write your code. Reactide is an IDE that was built from the ground up specifically for React development. Its coolest feature? It visualizes your component architecture right there inside the editor. It brings your code, a browser simulator, and a bunch of other tools all into one slick, efficient workflow. So as we've seen, all these different tools, they're really trying to do the same thing. And choosing the right ones isn't just a matter of personal preference. It has a real, direct impact on your development speed, how well your team collaborates, and ultimately the quality of the final product. Look, this list is a fantastic starting point, but the React ecosystem is, well, it's huge, and it's always growing. The perfect stack is really just the one that works best for you and your project. So that leaves me with one question for you. What are your go-to React tools? And which ones from this list are you maybe excited to try out next?